They moved in under the cover of darkness.
In the pre-dawn, the first troops prepared for the landing on Turkish soil.
Young men and women sacrificing everything for
It's the Kokoda track.
Love to.
Albert would have crossed this many, many times.
An incredibly fierce battle took place. 353 Australians lost their lives, and some of them were very young. Very young.
Welcome to a landmark new series.
I just feel it's important to know just exactly what he went through.
In their footsteps.
In a time of war, they risked everything they knew and loved. Not for money or a prize, but for their country. They came from our families, they're part of us. Now it's time to follow in their footsteps. As they journey to the battlefields, the oceans and the skies of our wars, 10 Australian families will discover that the past can come alive. Tonight, on the 25th of April 1915, 19-year-old Ronald Cavalier came ashore on Gallipoli. 5 months later, his father, Ernest, landed on the same beach and went looking for his son. Almost 100 years on, Josh Cavalier will understand why. Gallipoli, April the 25th, and thousands of Australians gather to honour the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the Anzacs. For many Australians, this is where our nation was born. But Gallipoli is also hundreds of personal stories, like this one, about a father and a son who go to war together. It's August 1914 and Britain has declared war on Germany. Australia reacts with overwhelming enthusiasm and 10,000 men enlist immediately. One of them is Ron Cavalier, an 18-year-old mechanic who joins up in St Kilda. His war story could have been like so many others, except for one thing. 5 months after Ron joined, his father Ernest became a soldier and went searching for his son. Now Josh Cavalier is on a quest to find them both.
It's quite amazing that there's been 3 generations of my dad's side of the family that have been involved in a war in some capacity. My grandfather and my great-grandfather were both in Gallipoli at the same time. And my dad was involved in the Vietnam War. He was in the Navy helping transport people and everything to and from Vietnam. Most sons idolise their dads when they're little, and that was the case for me.
One of the reasons Josh wants to understand the Ron and Ernest story is that his relationship with his own father has a troubled history.
Dad and Mum split up when I was quite young. After Dad left and went to Queensland, my connection with Dad really became, just the occasional phone call for Christmas or birthday. It got to the point where I really didn't know who my dad was because he wasn't there in my life. Mum decided, okay, we'll go up and see him. And it was quite a shock when I got there. He's living in a tent on the river and I was faced with his addictions. Really, he wasn't the person that I remembered from when I was a kid at all. And that took quite a bit of getting used to.
When Josh was at early high school, I actually found a little note that Josh had written, "Please God, help me to stop my dad from drinking."
I've seen what it's done to him, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It's, yeah, that must be so hard for him. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That time in my life I was drinking fairly hard. I didn't see Josh very often. I'd go up to the house and phone through every now and then. He would not have done well living with me at that stage. And after getting a bit of sense knocked into me with a frying pan, I woke up to myself a bit. I got a few demons out of my system and came back and got a better contact with my son.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, come out, we'll sit down.
Brian, knowing that Josh is searching for his Gallipoli ancestors, has a very special gift for his son, something he's kept safe for years.
Dad sent this back from Egypt when they left to go to France on the Somme. Yep. And we had it in a motorbike saddlebag along with the medals for a fair while. And that's them at Broadmeadows before they left in 1914, September.
Yep.
Dad on Billy, his horse.
Okay.
Ron Cavalier took these photographs nearly 100 years ago, and they're the first sign for Josh of what he might discover on his journey.
So, is this all my grandfather's handwriting?
Yeah, that's all his in pencil. He put a bit in here because he sent it home from Egypt for Mum. Roses are red, violets are blue, honey is sweet, and so are you.
Yeah,
He's trying to get on a good side even though he's over there, brother. And that's it. That came back by ship, and Mum looked after him. So that's a good thing to have from the history, from
definitely.
Dad and Granddad.
Yeah, right.
Seeing as where you're going and what you're going to experience. And
definitely love to bring back a story for Dad, and for him to learn something about his father and his grandfather would be just amazing.
In the book are tiny photographs of Gallipoli and France, but most importantly a precious photo of Ron and one of his dad Ernest, Josh's ancestors.
Some of these pictures are really clear.
Oh, they're amazing. Has your dad just been holding on to the book?
Yeah, he's been carrying around for years. So I have no idea what any of these are.
No.
When I look through that book, I just get this feeling that there's so much information that I don't know. And for me to actually be able to find out, you know, all about my grandfather that I never met and my great-grandfather would fill in so many blanks and so many holes at that side of my family, which to me is, it's really important.
The search for answers starts here, in Melbourne.
Sometime. It's very exciting, this project that's going on with your family.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And in 20 years I thought I'd found it all. But you know what? There's more.
Wow, are you serious?
I'm serious. So this is the enlistment document of your great-grandfather, Ernest Sidney Cavalier, and the date here is the 16th of February 1915. He's listed here as being 44 years and 5 months on the date of enlistment.
Yep.
But look at this. He was actually born earlier than that, and he was actually 47 years and 5 months.
45, I think, was the cut-off.
Well, he lied.
Wow.
They lived in Caulfield, and even in those days, Caulfield was a reasonable suburb. They weren't poor, obviously. He had a job, a life. Now, I've got 2 entries in the post office directories previously of him owning a wood yard in Malvern Road, Paran, and also being a fruiterer in South Yarra.
Okay.
But in actual fact, he left behind a wife and 2 daughters.
Really?
And a mother, who'd been long since widowed, who'd lost 4 of her own babies.
Yeah, right.
And also 2 daughters.
Wow.
So in actual fact, he was the only man left in the family. He was only 6 when his father died, Josh, so he'd grown up without a father. Maybe he wanted to support his son in a way that he hadn't been supported. I suspect he went to be with his son. And then he's left all those women. So why do you think he might have done that?
Runs in the family.
It does, Josh, when I look at the family line back from 1560 to your generation, and there's been a lot of fracturing of relationships between particularly fathers and sons. Do you think that rings a bell?
Oh, look, definitely. You know, it's from... What can I say?
The great thing is that you and your dad are repairing your relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Buzz, this is amazing.
Well, I'm sure there's more surprises to come.
I hope they're not as emotional as that one.
The sacrifice of our young men in World War I was so important to the nation that in memory of them, this building was constructed, the Australian War Memorial. Josh wants to discover what they know about the Cavaliers.
So Josh, this is one of the original boats used in the landings on the 25th of April 1915, and it's identical in every way to the sort of boat that your grandfather and great-grandfather would have landed in when they arrived at Gallipoli.
Wow.
The invasion fleet, British, French, Indian and Anzac, moved in under cover of darkness. In the pre-dawn, the first troops prepared for the landing on Turkish soil.
They towed them in as close as they could to shore, and from there the men, of course, had to row the rest of the way until they got to the beach.
So how many men per boat?
You'd have got 30 or 40 men on board with all of their equipment, everything they needed for their first few days ashore. You can see the steel-hulled boat has been hit many times by bullets and by shrapnel. And something much larger down here, a big jagged shell splinter, big piece of steel's punched a hole clean through that.
You can imagine what that would do to someone, yeah, on the other side.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a good place to be, would it?
No.
Ronald Cavalier was a bombardier, a gunner, part of the team that fired a field gun called an 18-pounder, because that was the weight of the shell.
Contains a big...
And Nick Fletcher has more than just photographs of the gun to show Josh.
I represent it as an example of the 18-pounder as used by your granddad on Gallipoli. And in pretty solid condition too, fully functional. We haven't fired it for a long time, I can tell you, but
Mate, I'm speechless.
It's pretty much all there. This one's in pretty good condition. So there you've got the breech open, you can see the way it operates. So that's your typical 18-pounder round. You're welcome to have a hold and a feel. Men like your grandfather are pushing the rounds into it, the breech is closed, and away she goes. You can fire up to 20 rounds a minute. It's not easy, it's hard work. A shrapnel shell contains a large number of lead shot. We saw the holes.
Yeah, in the
landing boat.
So that's what they fill the shell
That's what the inside of the shell is filled with. There's a tube in the middle which has an explosive charge, and then the charge is dispersed all over the advancing troops or whatever else you're trying to hit and destroy. If you go to Gallipoli, you will find these things everywhere. Our children's children's children will still be finding these things in years to come.
I didn't expect to see a gun that my grandfather would have actually used, and actually walking up and standing next to it sort of brought that alive. Just another piece in the puzzle to who he was and what he did and all that sort of stuff. That was really special for me.
Everybody go, wacko, blowing! Wacko, blowing! Away with the fairies!
Despite their 10 years of absence from each other, Josh and Brian have a common love, music.
Getting his teeth in.
Tomorrow, Josh leaves for Gallipoli. We asked him if perhaps his dad might go with him, but Josh replied that Brian would never get on a plane. So they're having a party instead, a last jam together.
I truly, truly know that Josh's connection with his father has helped Josh to understand who he is in himself, but also develop a wiser more worldly understanding in general. So fathers are important. Even though they might have problems, they're important.
Melbourne Airport. And just like his grandfather, Josh is off to Gallipoli. But no one should underestimate the love of a father for his son.
Go
23:35. It's a long, late night.
Yeah. Doha, 031.
Okay, count to 6777.
Holy shit.
There you go. Aye. You're not going on your own. Good on you, Dad.
I really would have loved to have met my grandfather or my great-grandfather, and this whole journey has the potential to fill in so many gaps. I think for us, that can only make our relationship stronger. Yeah.
So you got your dad going into it's just
Good girl.
Just as Ron and Ernest once did, Josh and Brian Cavalier are taking their first steps in the country where the Anzacs landed. But they have a guide.
I'm Josh.
The eminent Australian historian, Michael McKernan.
Nice to meet you, Michael. Brian and Josh, welcome to Istanbul, once known as Constantinople, one of the most ancient and most beautiful cities in the world. That's the Blue Mosque.
All right.
And there's the Hagia Sophia over there.
All right.
And then over here is the Bosphorus.
Yeah.
The Bosphorus separates this city, cuts it in two. That strait is not too dissimilar from another stretch of water that we're going to see fairly soon when we go right down the other end of the peninsula here to the Dardanelles. This is Anzac Cove, a sacred site for most Australians. And what I'd like you to do is start thinking about what was happening here at the dawn of the 25th of April 1915.
Turkey had ended the war and the British wanted the threat extinguished. So at 3:30 a.m. on that day, the first 36 boats of Australians were landed on the wrong beach, and the Gallipoli campaign began. The Turks were waiting for them. The Anzacs scrambled up sheer cliff faces into a maze of ravines and gullies. Dead and dying lay everywhere. It was chaos. Worst of all, the Turks had artillery high on the cliffs, and the big guns lay down a killing arc of fire.
The Turks had sighted the guns on Gaba Tepe, which is over there,
Yeah.
and they were firing from there to here on this beach here and causing all sorts of chaos. If only one of our guns could be firing into the Turks at Gaba Tepe and stop the shells that were coming over in such profusion. We know there was only one Australian gun landed on the day of the 25th of April, and that was from the 4th Battery.
What, hang on, 4th battery being my grandfather's battery?
That's your grandfather's battery, and one of those guns was landed.
Well, I mean, the chances of it being his gun, but how would we know?
I can assure you that we know because we have this document here that your grandfather wrote to his mother to tell her what had happened.
What had happened?
Really?
Yep. And this is remarkable because history can only be told through the records. And here we have your grandfather's account of the landing on that afternoon of the 25th of April, bringing that one gun ashore. Brian, why don't you read just exactly as your dad wrote it?
At last we were ready and set off for the shore. As we drew closer in, the bullets hit the pontoon with the ping and the shrapnel was coming down.
We had to jump into the water up to our waists and pull the pontoons in. Then we rushed the guns and wagons onto the beach. The head officers came along and made us load up again. And when we were ready to get away, they made us unload again. And then we waited. The beach was crowded with wounded and dead and presented an awful sight.
So they landed it twice?
Yeah, well,
Officers.
yes, they brought it on and then they were told to take it off.
Officers. Yeah.
Well, they told to put it back on when they finally got it here.
Well, obviously they thought the gun was too big, too heavy, whatever, to get up those hills. I mean, the officer must have thought it's impossible. So, take it away, take it off. And then somebody countermanded that and said, as you read,
yes,
Brian,
we need artillery.
We need artillery. And that was your granddad.
Landed the first gun here on Gallipoli.
Yeah.
My dad.
How's that make you feel?
Oh, that's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So they get the gun dragged along the beach and they go, if you can see that point, there's the first low point.
Yes.
That's Queensland Point.
Yes.
And they get other men to assist them and somehow or other, God only knows how, they pulled that gun onto Queensland Point.
Yes.
And by 6 o'clock they were able to start firing to Gallipoli.
I remember Dad saying that they loaded the gun, you got to set up in position and loaded it, and his mates said, well, I'm going to fire the first shot. Dad said, no, you're not, pull the lanyard. And he said, you're fire the second. No, it's what he said.
Good Lord.
From his word, from his mouth.
So your father was the first man to fire an artillery shell on Anzac.
Yes.
My goodness.
It was.
That's a story.
He told me that himself. I've always been proud of that.
I bet you have. There's a lot to be proud about.
Yep.
So?
Probably haven't lived up to his expectations, but I did what I could.
Of course you did.
At the end of the first day, as Ron Cavalier stood by his gun, 2,000 Australians lay around him, killed or wounded. For better or worse, he was on Gallipoli.
Yes.
And reading what was done and actually standing here and seeing it.
It's your granddad writing it.
Yeah, that's right. It does. It makes it live. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You got the first gun up here and got it going, you know.
And fired the first shot.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
2 weeks later, and 14,000 kilometres away, newspaper headlines told Australia what happened. And Ernest Cavalier was on a troop ship, on his way to his boy. The Anzacs tried for weeks to advance inland. This was as far as they got, Quinn's Post, just 1,000 metres from the beach. From here, you could see the entire Australian camp.
We're looking down that way. Down that cliff is where all those who served and fought here lived.
Ron Cavalier would have had no idea that his father was on his way to Gallipoli. He was too busy surviving. Besides the bullets and the shells, there were flies, lice, mosquitoes and rats. It was stinking hot in summer and freezing in winter. And disease was everywhere.
This was such a dangerous place to be because the Turks, their opponents, were just across the other side there. So close that they actually were able to throw bombs across from one trench to the other. If the fuse was long enough, somebody would catch it and send it back.
Yes,
and
I heard about one chap who had 3 and he lit the 3 and threw 2 and the third one took his hand off.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
God.
just,
yeah.
It must have been
And they were
pretty-
so rudimentary. They were just jam tins packed with explosives.
Nuts and bolts and things.
Something you might like to see here. This is here. This is Ron, who took these.
Oh, right. View of country from below, Mackay's Hill.
Okay.
Ah, so that is that.
From here.
They're fantastic. Well, we know we're standing on the right spot then, don't we?
Yes. I've looked at that Anzac Days for years and wondered about it, now here.
Of course, it was absolutely murderous. It was hell up here. But it was everywhere on Anzac. I mean, down there where your grandfather was, even these poor Turks over here. Right. You know, I mean, there's thousands of them packed into the trenches there. But rather than me tell you about that, can I introduce you to Kenan Selek, a Turkish gentleman, and knows so much about this campaign.
Hi. Kenan Selek is one of Turkey's leading experts on the Gallipoli campaign. So much so that in 2000, he was awarded the Order of Australia for his services to our history, the first Turkish citizen to receive that honour.
So, Kenan, these are the Anzac trenches?
Yes, these are Anzac trenches we are walking in at the moment. They were 3 meters deep at the time, but today they're not 3 meters deep, but still deep. And sandbags as well on top.
So sandbags, 3 meters deep, and then sandbags.
Sandbags, yeah, protection, like a wall.
Kenan wants the Cavaliers to understand the other side of Gallipoli, so he's taken them to this battlefield, Johnston's Jolly. A month after Ron landed, it was here that the Turks tried to drive the Anzacs back into the sea.
So, look, this is Johnston Jolly, and then Turkish trenches. Anzacs on this side, trying to check them.
How many Turks on this side?
Imagine a front line 2 kilometers long and roughly 40,000 men attacking along that line. And then 3 a.m. in the morning, Turkish attack started.
42,000 Turks attacked in waves, running straight into overwhelming Anzac firepower, including shells fired by Ron Cavalier's gun. Almost 1 million rifle and machine gun bullets were fired by Australians that day. 10,000 Turks lay killed or wounded. It changed forever the way each side felt about the other.
Roughly 6 hours battle lasted, and we suffered horrific losses. Anzac losses were very small, 500-600 men. On the following day, ceasefire, was observed. 9 hours fighting, stopped. This was the only ceasefire in Gallipoli. So actually, all along here, there are many Turks, buried underground.
Hallowed ground.
Still, they're there. So never again they had the same attitude towards Turks. So we can consider that as a big turning point here from Anzac perspective.
Yes. It's amazing they became friends after such a big battle.
Yeah. When you come to visit this sort of site, to show respect and understand the history and heritage, etc., so we should appreciate the value of peace.
Oh yes,
and,
certainly.
How lucky we are.
I'll say.
Don't you reckon this is just one of the most beautiful sights?
Look at the view out there, isn't it?
Fantastic.
After Johnston's Jolly, Gallipoli settled into trench warfare for a time, and Ron Cavalier grabbed the chance to take a few photographs.
Even though it's winter, you'd almost want to dive in straight away.
No, swimming.
You're not a swimmer?
It's a fight against the law of gravity to me. Constant battle to stay where the air is.
Michael has brought the Cavaliers here to show them where Ron stood back in 1915.
We're here.
And to give them a surprise.
And that picture, which your dad took, I reckon is taken from Mackay Hill, which is not the first one there, but the second one. He's taking the photograph from there over to here.
So
directly across to where we are.
So we're standing here.
We're standing about there, yeah, that's right. I reckon he would have been looking across at this open space with a degree of pleasure and satisfaction. Well, it would have been good to get over there and have a bit of a relax, but obviously he couldn't do that. But there's something else in the story that we've got to tell you now, and that is that, like so many others, your dad and your granddad got quite crook. In late July, in 1 week, 1,200 Anzacs were evacuated sick, and your dad was one of them. Oh. And we've got the casualty form of Ronald Ernest Cavalier, right? And we see down here, he's transferred to the Beach Hospital on the 28th of July, 1915, and then he's taken to a hospital in Malta, suffering from varicocele. What? You're familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
What is that?
Well, unfortunately, it's varicose veins in the testicles.
Oh, ouch.
Ooh.
Crikey.
Yeah. Now, you could almost guess
taken a blow
the strain of getting that gun all the way up those hills.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not a medical person, but I think varicose veins is caused by undue pressure. Like a hernia, exactly.
Well, I never knew that.
Didn't you?
No.
It's probably not something you really discuss around the kitchen table, is it?
No, you say to your mum or your wife, yeah, well, it's called sore balls, really.
That's the wonder we're still here.
Yes.
I wonder we made it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's probably why I got bandy legs. Can't get my knees together.
And it's quite possible he felt awfully embarrassed.
Of course.
Oh, of course, yeah.
What's wrong with you, Ron? Oh, jeez, mate. I can't tell you, but
I can't sit down.
Oh, they would have given him stick.
So he goes on the 29th of July, right? But, of course, his dad, Ernest, is on the water.
Right.
The 22nd Battalion are on their way here to help out, the reinforcements, and he arrived in early September. So Ron's off in hospital, and, of course, Ernest, in the meantime, he's looking for his son.
Of course.
So where's my boy Ron? Oh, no, mate, he's off in hospital. What, he's wounded? No, mate, he's got sore balls. It would have been a surprise, really.
It would have been.
I remember as a kid I came down off my pedals on my bike onto the crossbar, and one swelled up really big. And I remember Dad coming and looking at it and saying, it'll get better.
Well, he knew.
He knew, yeah. That's one thing I never knew.
He never talked about that?
No, never.
So Ernest Cavalier finally landed on Gallipoli. And while he waited for his son to come back from hospital, the army gave him a particular job. Brian and Josh are about to discover just what that job was.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Lovely.
Okay, now I have another surprise.
Keenan has taken Josh and Brian to a friend's house. Jose's grandfather also served on Gallipoli, on the Turkish side.
Surprise.
Today menu.
And today's menu here in the
Wow.
Just guess what sort of food inside.
I have no idea.
No idea?
Oh, some chicken.
Aha.
What is this? This looks fantastic. And some beans.
I knew there would be some beans.
Here is the menu.
Shrapnel Gully.
Quartermaster.
Birthday
party. Shrapnel Gully, Anzac, Gallipoli.
Menu. Stew.
Tinned
chicken. Slapdash pancake.
And cook.
Yes, Cavalier.
Ernest Sydney. It's your grandfather.
Oh, yeah.
This is the chef.
Chef E.S. Cavalier. Good heavens, isn't that
So, 95 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
Here we are doing it again. Oh, well. And I'd like to thank you very much, sir, for what you've done.
Thank you, thank you. Please join us.
Just imagine, 95 years ago, if Turkish people and Australians had met in different circumstances, they would have the same thing like us today.
Yes.
And your grandfather,
yes,
in Gallipoli, my great uncle,
yes,
and then his grandfather,
the same thing.
So what on earth? These people died then, or fought each other.
So many.
Pointless, war is pointless. But it happens. You cannot change it. So let's taste it when it's as good as it was 95 years ago.
Look at that, son. This has been exceptional. I remember Dad saying that they were friends with Johnny Turk by the time they left. They shouted across from trench to trench. But to meet these people and this man,
and also you, sir,
and to be treated like this is really marvellous. It's just blew me away. And to have this come out the same way that the granddad would have done it is really something. So I'm pleased to meet these people and to be friends with them.
Thank you so much.
And I wish I could eat more of this tucker.
Very good tucker, huh?
It is good tucker.
Good tucker. Yeah.
And I'll be back.
You try and stop him. So what did you think of the dinner today, Dad?
Very surprising.
Yeah, wasn't it?
When they brought the menu out, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, that's really quite something.
I didn't realise he was cooking. I thought he would have been fighting.
Yeah.
But the original meal Ernest cooked wasn't prepared in safety. It was here, in Shrapnel Valley, and what a dangerous place that was.
This is Shrapnel Gully, hair-raising place. Today it looks so peaceful, so quiet, but 96 years ago, it was not. It was the valley Anzacs used as a street for communication, like thoroughfare. But Turks knew this, directed shrapnel fire from behind over this gully. That's why the name was used as shrapnel afterwards. And so many Anzacs were wounded and killed. And Charles Bean, Australian historian, said daily losses suffered in Anzac almost 150 while moving back and forth.
150 men a day?
Daily, 150 casualties, imagine, death, wounded, and etc. So imagine how many men were deployed here, roughly 400 acres of land, like sardines, in a box, so many men just packed around here.
So this is a sacred site for Turkish as well as Australians.
Yeah, as well. So
we'll have a walk around and
just
and have a look.
Parks, Johnson.
It must have been pretty hard for Ernest here and dodging all the shrapnel and everything else and wondering whether Ron was coming back. That's hard to imagine if I was here cooking and dodging around the place and watching blokes get shot and waiting for you to come like that. It would have been pretty hard.
Pretty rough.
When you consider Turkish, they've got 86 buried here too. It's
and unmarked.
Unmarked. Yes, it's very sad.
Around here.
It's the Cavaliers' last day on the Gallipoli Peninsula, and Brian has worn his naval uniform as a special mark of respect.
Yeah, there he is up there.
First, though, Michael has one last place to show them.
You made it then?
Yeah, we got here.
When Ron came back to Gallipoli, his father Ernest was there. The question is, did they meet?
Now, you know, of course, that's Shrapnel Valley.
Yes.
Because that's the cemetery there. And we know that's where your granddad was,
yes,
Ernest. And we also know, because we've looked at his record, that he was not injured, was not wounded, didn't get sick. So he served right through and in there until the evacuation.
Right.
And then if you run your eye over the second hill, the higher of the two, that's Mackay Hill. So that's where the 4th Battery was.
Right.
We know that Ron came back on the 7th of November from hospital and rejoined his battery on Mackay Hill. And we can see how close those two positions are.
Yes.
It wouldn't be more than 200
metres.
Yeah, it's very close.
So we must assume, we'd be fools not to assume, that they would have met. Of course they would.
With a name like Cavalier, as soon as Ernest was here and they knew he was his dad, they would have told him he was in hospital and...
He's all right, you know, he's just got an unpleasant condition and...
hernia.
Whatever. And
I think they would have been a little bit more descriptive probably for Ron, you know, to come back and
find his dad here.
Hey mate.
Hey, mate.
Your old man's over there. What?
That would have been something.
What do you reckon they would have said? Huh?
What are you doing here?
What the hell are you doing
here? Where have you been? Taking a holiday.
What about Mum and, you know?
Who's looking after Mum?
All that sort of stuff, you know.
Aren't you a bit too old to be here?
Yeah.
Because he'd be amongst all the young fellas.
Gee, the war must be going bad if they're sending old blokes like you over here. That would have been fantastic.
Oh, crikey,
It's remarkable, isn't it, just how close they are.
And how small the place is.
And how small the place is.
I thought it'd be bigger than this.
Yeah, that's the thing that's rather misleading. Like, from where we're standing, we can see, there's one end, and there's the other end.
Oh, this is amazing. All my life I never thought I'd be here. It's really something. Good to be here, mate.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Well done, you.
Help me now to build this bridge. I do not know where to begin. Help me now to find my way. The morning comes.
Ron and Ernest Cavalier survived Gallipoli and the Western Front as well.
And I won't give in, not before.
Their story is about family, in war and peace, in good times and bad.
Well, Ernest Sydney and Ronald Ernest, you'd like to put this here for the mates that they left behind, in honour of them, and lest we forget.
The wild swans fly to the setting sun.
There we go.
Well done, son. I think you've got something here to have a look at.
Brian has a sister, Anne. 20 years ago, when his drinking was at its worst, she had to pull away from him. But now she's given us a letter. In it she says it's time for them to meet and to be together again. And she's enclosed some photos he's never seen of another father and son.
Holy
Look at this.
Dad, Sid. Oh, good grief.
Ronald and Ernest marching together on Anzac Day.
Getting all sooky here. You still got the round glasses. Look at that. Damn, I remember them.
There were many family reunions at Anzac March in Melbourne. Mr. E.S. Cavalier, 22nd Battalion, and Mr. R.E. Cavalier, Howard's Battery, father and son.
You got a bit of family history there, son. I'll have to go and see Anne. Good grief. Son, you've done a great thing for me.
Just glad you can be here.
I'll remember it until I'm gone, don't you worry. And I'll still be watching.
I know.
You know that. I'm sorry it didn't turn out the way it should have with your mum, but you're going on good now.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
We're here.
Good boy. You really are. I'm very proud of you.
Help me now to build this bridge.
Dad and Granddad, what do we do?
I can't begin. Help me now to find my way.
Love you, son.
Love you too, Dad.
Then fades to grey.
There is another little, well, it's not a brown envelope.
Okay.
But it's something else that we've got for you. From all of us in their footsteps, I guess, mate. This is something that we wanted to give to you. It's been amazing, so.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, mate. Cheers. That's all yours. It's been such a pleasure to meet you.
And you. Yeah, I've been very impressed with your work. It's been a lot of fun.
Not at all, mate. Do you know what that is?
That'd have to be some sand from Gallipoli.
What a beautiful thing that is. Hey, thank you very much.
That's a good one. I really like that one.
You got to stop doing this.
Ernest too. Yeah. And the line point stuff. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Much appreciated.